Hey, David, how are you?
Welcome, Billy. Happy New Year, man.
Yeah, happy New Year to you. Here we are, episode 10. This is going to be good. We got a good one planned for today. It's going to be fun.
Excited for the show. I always love coming into a new year. There's that old saying, fail to plan, plan to fail. And I love these shows. I love what we get to do and how we get to give back to our guests and our listeners with these
Yeah,
topics.
we've got a great one today. So just to get in right into it. So thanks for the metal. Today's show is brought to you by Metal Pless, clearing the way for a safer environment. Always copied, never duplicated. Today's show is sales differentiation that makes a difference. Our guest today, Alan White from Turf Systems, also the Canadian Nursery Association, and a board member at Project Evergreen. Alan's going to share with us some great environmental, some activity he's been putting in on his side with some environmental best practices, and can't wait to hear what he has to say and how he's going to help us share this information with our clients and our listeners. So before we get into that, let's do a quick recap of the last show, the consultative process of sales and client development with Jonathan Burns. Great friend of the industry, friend of David's. I got to know him a little bit. He really shared some good nuggets for our listeners. One of the things he talked about was being able to define the problem accurately. I think a lot of people, when they're in the business of trying to do consultative sales, that they're not really digging into where the problem actually is. He finds himself spending quite a bit of time interviewing his clients and asking a lot of questions, doing a lot of research, and coming up with the proper diagnosis, if you will, for companies that he's working with. And then his final comment was pretty cool for us to think about. Is he would probe a little bit, and then he'd demonstrate competence. Probe a little bit, demonstrate competence. So that was his way of building trust with his clients and with a client, if you would, in the sales process, using some of his best practices. That would be great. In case you missed it, you can go back and listen to it. We're on Spotify, Apple iTunes. You can also catch us on the YouTube, all at Sales Talk Show is how you find us. David, why don't you share with the listeners again? We always talk about it, but it's a lot of fun to share each episode. Is why we get into this, doing this podcast together.
Yeah, what a great segue to the purpose and intent. And using Jonathan's analogy from the last show, he talked about drilling down into things, right? And Billy, you hit on that key point, right, of the benefit of the back and forth with the client and building trust. Our goal with the show, of course, is to drill down to the issues. We really want to provide information and give back to our listeners in the sales industry. And the whole messaging behind why we did this was to give back, to support, to help raise up the next generation, in a space where there just seems to be a need for more sales coaching, more sales training, more sales mentoring. And so we're excited to be able to do that with our guests and through our experience, you and I, right, through education, real world experiences, and practical learning. Something beautiful that came from this too, of course, was how we get to support our stakeholders in the industry, our suppliers, and those who are also supporting and promoting the industry and sales professionals at large. And so this has been a great way to give back and to also be supported by them. Our title sponsor, Metal Pless, just so we're so grateful for their partnership with us in the show today and every episode. And so before we get to our topic today, let's just hear a few words right now and a quick message from Metal Pless, and then we'll get right to it.
Metal Pless, the most profitable choice. The snow removal industry has never been more complex. To be profitable, you must choose the right tool for the right job. The Metal Pless snowplow, combined with its patented live edge technology, has become the #1 choice for snow fighters across North America, Europe, and Asia. The live edge technology allows the cutting edge of the plow to fully contour the surface of the ground. Our unique concepts have allowed snow fighters to be more efficient, reduce maintenance cost, and in turn, create larger profits. In today's market, operating the most versatile piece of equipment, combined with massive salt savings, thanks to the patented live edge technology, are the reasons why Metal Pless is the obvious choice.
Here we are. Today's topic, such an exciting topic on differentiation within sales. Billy, something that you shared with me recently was about the significance that relationships play in the sales process, right? And that up to 85% of
Mm.
the process of sales is built on relationship, and the sales success is a result of relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to connect with a prospect or a potential client is based on the need to develop some trust and
Mhm.
how to be a trusted advisor, a trusted partner. Starts with that initial introduction, and sometimes
Mhm.
that initial introduction, you want to make a great first impression, but you have to have something different, right? We're all sort of
Mhm.
doing the same thing with different color uniforms and different color trucks. So I think our guest today is going to really highlight some ways to differentiate yourself from the competition and add some, special sauce to your presentation that
Mhm.
makes you a little different and maybe more relevant. Maybe just getting that first, be able to get the foot in the door. So excited to hear from our guest.
Yeah, very much so. Today's talk, I like these three words: simple, specific, and targeted. Today's topic about differentiating within the sales process and being relevant to your client. It's so important to bring innovation, like you said, Billy, right? And it's about being simple with specific things that are targeted to the client,
Mhm.
and that helps them and helps their needs. And so we're excited to have Alan White on today from Turf Systems. Alan, welcome to the show, and welcome to the show. You're in Canada, not far from where I am, and here in Toronto. We're both in Toronto region, and so excited to be the three of us again. Toronto, and of course, Billy, you're in Boston this morning.
Hmm.
Yeah. Welcome, Alan.
Yeah, no, it's great to be to here live with you guys and to share a bit of my story and my 35 years experience, not just in the landscape management business with turf systems, but also the work that I've done with Landscape Ontario, sitting on its board of directors for the last 25 years. I don't want to date myself too much, but also as the incoming vice president of the Canadian Nursery Landscape Association. And then probably the bigger what will come out of the conversation here today, not just my business experience, um, but my front seat in being the Canadian Climate Chair for the last 8 years, which has allowed me to really kind of look at how our sector can adapt and participate in the climate conversation. I've had the opportunity not just to do it at the local level of my business, but also the opportunity to sit in some of the biggest stages in the world with the UN climate summits, starting with COP26 in Glasgow, all the way up to just recently in Baku, Azerbaijan, and Cali, Colombia, with COP16 of the Biodiversity Summit there. So high level conversations, but at the same time, it's always exciting to be able to participate and have a stage like yours to really to have a dialogue between the three of us, how this relates to our market, our businesses, and to the greater market as a whole.
So, Alan, tell us a little bit about what you do at Turf Systems, because that was a great point you just made about how you're professionally serving in our industry. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Turf Systems. Of course, you own Turf Systems.
Mhm.
A little bit about what Turf Systems does for its clients, and then let's set the foundation for the issue today for the topic.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, Turf Systems was a passion dream. I grew up in the golf course industry and in rural GT, a Greater Toronto area, managing turf and landscapes from a fertility of water and a pest management perspective on the golf course, and that just evolved through my growing up. And I started business when I was 23. That really kind of extended that passion that I had. I won't get into all my education, but it's so many people will tell you, especially in this space, that it really came from passion more than what I thought my academic experience. Now, my academic experience certainly helped in marketing and business, but my aspirations to be a landscape manager, to understand the environment, the ecosystems. I had some great mentors growing up that really gave me an appreciation for the environment that I operated in, the outdoors, that was my landscape, no pun intended, my canvas to operate a business. So that's where my humble beginnings. Now, my business aspect of it being in the pest control fertility and water management put me kind of right in the crosshairs and in the forefront of environmentalism and what's the role of landscape and the tools and our knowledge base at managing urban environments, which for all intents and purposes are built environments, built ecosystems. So they don't happen naturally by chance. They happen through design, build, proper care and maintenance, which is really an understanding of what plants, nature, these environments need, but also what the shortcomings are. And then how do we adapt? How do we maintain them in environments that go all the way from backyards to boulevards to parks to now balconies, green roofs, green walls. As the cities intensify, the urban environment gets a little more extreme. The craft of what we do and how landscapes are becoming even more important today, probably than they've ever been in history, was kind of the catalyst as to where my business and then my volunteerism and the opportunity to speak on some of the biggest stages in the world is to what our businesses can bring to the larger conversation of importance and relevance, where people are spending money, where governments are making decisions, and how the market opportunity presents itself.
So what would you see, and thanks for that, Alan, that's very helpful. What would you see as the foundation that needs to be established as it relates to the understanding of today's topic at heart? So we're talking about differentiation in the marketplace. And so if you can put into a nutshell summary, 747 high level, what is the foundation that needs to be established and understood as it relates to today's topic?
I think it's the landscape and its relevance. It has not so much changed, but actually sits at the forefront of an opportunity that hasn't been seen before, because we all know landscape from its form. We all know it from its creative aspect. It's softening the edges. It's beautiful. It contributes to our health and wellness. It contributes to economic value, property values. The list goes on and on as far as its aesthetic value and its economic value. But what's becoming increasingly evident is the environmental contribution that landscapes, plants, air, water, and soil contribute to, not just here in Canada or the US of 440 million people, but the larger context of 7 billion people, and how urban cities are becoming home, the environment that we all operate our businesses in for the foremost is an environment that has huge opportunity, but also has huge importance, because it goes beyond just being beautiful now. It really has to go with how our cities cool themselves, moderate their temperatures, avoid droughts, avoid some of the impacts from fires, heat, floods. But more importantly, we're also seeing with this intensification that two of the largest contributors to poor health and well-being, and even as extreme as death, is air pollution and heat are combined the two number one at risk to the population globally, and it's most intense in our urban centers, which is again where our market plays, and we can have a significant impact on those people's, not just our clients' well-being, but the greater community's well-being.
Yeah, it's interesting, Alan. You say that. I think as industry professionals, we've, between the three of us, we probably have 100 years experience, if not more. And we've been around this so much. It's super obvious to us, some of the things that you say and some of the things you bring to light, that we've probably had, kind of mulling around in the back of our head saying, that makes a lot of sense. That's pretty important. We should pay more attention to that. But I think the common denominator is the information isn't out there far enough and wide enough, right? The information is there for those that want to go find it and seek it. But we got to make a concerted effort to get it out there to people so they can almost touch it, right? In a way that they can say, you know what, if I did this and I did my part, right, I think I would be a contributor to, you said it, air, water, and soil, right? Improving those three elements, start to kind of make, connect the dots. I'm excited about the way you've been able to break it down for me. I mean, the past couple of times we've spoken, I've just got a chance to meet you, and you've really brought a lot of stuff to my tool belt, if you will, when I'm getting ready to go out and talk to clients about, being in a situation where I can help them help their environmental and sustainability issues they might not even know they have. I mean, some of our property managers are like, "Oh, I'm in downtown Boston. I don't have much landscaping." I'm like, "Wait a minute. You have an enormous impact on the environment. And more maybe than in a suburban campus." So it's really kind of cool the way you've kind of structured your career to be kind of in the industry, but also expanded to the environmental sector is pretty unique. But I commend you for doing it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's where differentiation comes into play, right? When we talk about getting the message out there and understanding it and making it personal, not only for us as sales professionals, but making it personal and engaging our clients in the topic. In sales and marketing, the first thing that we need to understand about sales and marketing is the golden rule. And in the golden rule, right, it talks about believing in what you're selling and building trust. And so that is such a key part of how we take this and how we move forward with it, right? We got to believe in what we're selling and build trust. The second part is differentiation, how we are different in the marketplace so that we stand out, right? So that we're not the same as everyone else. I think it would be good if we spend some time right now just talking about that and how we as sales professionals message this. How do we unpack it for our clients? How do we deliver the message, and what's the desired outcome? I think it would be good if we talk a bit about that and some best practices as it relates to us as sales professionals and of course to property owners, our clients, and asset managers. Let's talk a bit about that as it relates to the landscape. Alan, how can we unpack this a little bit more as it relates to, for instance, landscape management?
I think I love the way you framed it there. And differentiation and belief are two critical components to any marketing strategy. As I look at the 50,000 foot level in a super competitive marketplace, and a lot of times when I hear our story being told too, we tend to put the narrative into things that we think are important to people first and foremost, but then we tend to put the conversation into buckets that relate to other things, like our car, like our house, our living room, our TV, the things that make us feel good, the things that will relieve stress, the things that will give us pleasure in our off time. But they don't really differentiate. There's a lot of things competing in that space. So when I talk to my colleagues and when I talk on big stages and small stages, one of the things we miss so often is the differentiator in our space that makes it unique and believable. You can't really argue about it. And as I listen to the climate narrative, it really speaks volumes. And I know we'll get into a little bit more detail in the conversation as time allows, but plants are really at the crossroad of where climate and water and everything that we're talking about, human health and wellness, and what goes beyond just making our cities livable, from the temperature and its ability to manage storms and the extremes of weather. Plants are at the intersection of that. Plants are the only thing that move carbon and clean air through cities. Plants are the only thing that really efficiently cool our cities and make them livable. That differentiates us. You can't argue about them. You can try, you can have a conversation about, but it's 100% believable because it comes back down to the core foundation of which came first. Was it the people or the plants? And we know how we don't have to go into the history of how the plant evolved, but we're here because of plants. Then if we're not here, plants will survive perfectly fine without us, and they will stabilize our environments again. That's our unique differentiator in our lightning rod. Nobody else can take it. Nobody else can argue with it. Nobody else can create something as efficient and as pleasing to the entire equation as what we do in urban landscapes. What makes it even more unique is the fact that urban landscapes, whether it's a backyard or roof or just in the neighborhood, a park, a boulevard, every single component about it, just by our very presence, is unnatural. So again, that really speaks volume to our knowledge, our experience, and our ability to build and adapt these landscapes, these critical ecosystems to our city at a small incremental component, but also on a larger macro scale, how they all intersect each other, or as a business, how we bring some aspect of that ecosystem servicing into the reality of how they all coexist to each other. So there's a lot of unique aspects that go right to the core of what it is that we bring to an urban environment that are more impactful, more relevant, and more differentiate us in, again, that competitive world of what makes a city livable.
Yeah, I love that. I think we've seen it over the years that, the green space initiatives that these developers are being, handed in their permitting processes become, more and more intense, which is great, right? It's great for the environment. It's great for all things, environmentally sensitive. We hear it all the time between snow and ice management, where you can and can't put snow piles and salt piles, and the use of salt and the non-use of salt, which I think makes a ton of sense. We're a big contributor to this, but I think as a sales professional, I sit and listen to property managers and asset managers and say, I have a black thumb. I can't grow anything. You guys are the professionals. Tell me what I need to know. And I think we have an opportunity to take what we know on a very, basic level and share with them. Like, my experience is I have a pretty decent knowledge of water management, what the benefits are of water management, savings, and all that. But I don't nearly explain it as well as I could. The other thing is, urban settings, we do a fair amount of properties that have roof gardens and terraces, and we hear a lot about the recycling of the water that's coming through those gardens and the benefits and all that. And that's all very, high level, again, the jet level, the 50,000 foot level. The one thing that comes to mind now is what happens next, right? What happens next to help us, message this out without being, walking down Main Street with a sign, right? I think it's like, an example comes to mind of, remember when it's probably been 10 years now, maybe even more, CrossFit, right? Everybody's working out in a gym. They're working out at their local gym, their Planet Fitness, their whatever, name the local gym, and they're walking on treadmills and they're doing all the workout areas. And then all of a sudden, these small little, micro gyms started popping up in downtown, vacant buildings, and then, then you see, half a dozen people running around the block holding a 25-pound, plate in their hand. They're running around the block and they're dragging something down the sidewalk. It was like, what the heck's going on there? What are those people doing? And then, the boom of CrossFit just took off, right? So I think it's just being creative on how to get the messaging out. And I think CrossFit did a great job, right? If they just stayed in that gym and, worked out in that gym, and they never would have got the message. But getting outside and getting in the environment, and again, they're outside enthusiast type people that take part in CrossFit, so it made a lot of sense to get them outside. So maybe that same messaging could work in this environmental outreach.
Yeah, Alan, that's a great point that you made. As we look at taking the things that we do every day, right? What are the grassroots level things that we can do every day to create change? How do we message this and make it in a way that helps others get engaged with it in the same purpose, right? So I think we look at the socialization of it, right, is what Billy's getting at, right? Let's talk a bit about that and some sales tools and some ways that we can understand how we socialize the topic and differentiation in the market and create that differentiation.
Yeah, that's one of my passions and one of my reasons for being so involved at a volunteer level, at a board level, both in Canada and the US and globally with some of the other partners we have around the world. That takes me to the UN. But it's, how do we socialize it? How do we create the Fitbits? How do we create those incremental, so we understand at a social level how individual participation is personalized? So a lot of the conversation when you're at the high level and you look at the front page of the newspaper, you hear about heat, you hear about carbon, you hear about greenhouse gases, you hear about the urban heat island effects. These are all big macro things. But what's happening at the incremental level is they all intersect and they're being communicated through carbon. That's kind of the currency that we didn't create as a landscape sector, but speaks directly into what we do. So as I look to how do we create social vehicles, part of my passion in the US is with Project Evergreen. Part of it in Canada is with the Canadian Nursery and Landscape Association. And then we created an organization called the Green City Foundation. Within that environment, with the help of Esri International, who's a GIS, Global Information Satellite Mapping System, the University of Guelph, some of the other universities in the US with Project Evergreen, we created a clean air calculator that resides on the Green City Foundation's website. This was a starting point, like a Fitbit, to socialize the idea. And then we didn't talk about carbon in the sense of carbon. We talked about it in the sense of clean air, because clean air is personal. Clean air is something we all need. And it's a lesson that was really kind of borrowed from what we've seen, not just in the environmental movement, but the social movement around food security. Look at how celebrity chefs and others have talked about bringing everything into the 50-mile radius of a restaurant. It's important. Whole foods is important. If a nation can't feed its population, it doesn't matter how much money you have. So food security has moved up, water security, the ability to provide fresh water to all the residents that live in a country is critically important. And it's critically important, not just at home domestically, but on an international basis. So I like to get from the differentiation standpoint, how do we communicate? How do we make this personal? How do we scale it too? And how do we understand what's happening in the market? So that's where we created the clean air calculator. We built it on a platform that would start to look at this collective, build communities, build an understanding about how much a tree, how much a landscape, how much a lawn, how much an open green space, a roof, a balcony, a patio, how do they all contribute to an individual? And then collectively, what happens when you have an entire community get engaged? How many individuals does that support as community, and then a city? And you can imagine a broader and broader spectrum. It's also giving us better knowledge on how much green space there is in an urban environment. And it gives us a perspective on what are the real impacts on weather, what are the real impacts on health data, hospital intakes, mental health, cardiovascular incidents in hospitals, economic development issues within the city. So these are all some of the things at the macro level. Of course, that same conversation translates all the way down because we built it at an individual level. So how does that impact my employees? How does that impact my customers? We're a company that services a couple thousand residents and commercial properties. What's the impact of that couple thousand properties? Because my clients don't necessarily at an individual's perspective or again at a company wide. And then a bigger impact as we make it personal, my workforce, my team here at home, they really relate more to the micro of what I'm bringing back and how their impact when they come in on Monday is going to finish the day out. They didn't see 100 customers. They impacted 1,000 people with their knowledge, their activities, and their nurturance of the urban landscape. Mm-hmm. And then that translates into the week. That's how we measure. Those are simple things of how we measure and communicate with our teams as far as client, employee, and environmental impacts. In the back end, I know those all translate into sales and growth and profitability metrics, but are those important and personal to our mission and to our differentiation?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the name of the book, but there was a very well-written strategist that talked about people listening during a prospecting call, and there's a portion of your brain called the croc portion of your brain, and when it engages, it is locked in. And I am locked in right now in this clean air calculator. Mm-hmm. That sounds like something that I could, really get behind and have some people get behind, because it really just, it spells out what they do creates something, right? If you invest in your landscape and if you spend money in your grounds, if you do a great job maintaining your grounds, you're going to create clean air. Not only for your tenants, for yourself. It's like, it's amazing to think that how simple it is, but yet it, you said it, I think you said the Fitbit took off, right? Fitbit was something people put on their arm and they could see how far they walked, how much they slept, how much they exercise, what their heart rate is. This clean air calculator has the same potential, right?
Yeah, every day the sun's shining. The plants are doing what they do naturally. They photosynthesize and they take in carbon, which is the foundation of plants' photosynthesis, and produce clean air out of it. It does a whole bunch more, but that's the starting point. That's the differentiator. That's the thing that's personal. And if we can get clean air important in our customers' minds, we can get it important in policy. There's also other aspects of it that we know professionally and we know academically through research. The better we look after plants, the better our best management practices to allow plants and landscapes to survive and thrive in an urban environment. Nature-based thinking, but nature doesn't live and survive in cities that don't have proper access to aquifers, don't have natural soils, don't have the competition from compaction, road surfaces, population, reflective, all the things that a city beats up on, not just its population, but all the biodiversity, including the plants and the microfauna that live in those cities. These are all the contributors that are to our quality of life. So without getting it complicated, taking it back to a simple policy, do we have enough green space, enough clean air to support our population? And are the people that are living within these communities participating? Because I always say, especially with the United Nations, even governments can't fix this problem solely. It really requires each of us individually, not just in our business, as you talk about our corporate social responsibility of our clients, but also us as businesses. And as we look at our future workforce, their workforce that is really honed in on purpose, values, mission. And is the company I work for aligned with what's important to me? And if you can demonstrate all these things while a landscape's still beautiful, a landscape still adds economic value, but if landscapes as important as food security, water security, and air security, and policy dictates that not only do you need it, but it needs to be healthy and vibrant, because we can't create necessarily more green space in the city, but if it's healthy, living, and thriving, it will exponentially contribute to the greater ecosystem than if it is just existing. Or unfortunately, we see too often in cities where we turn off the water, we don't allow nutrients to be provided, pests take over, or the natural ecosystem, because of the extremes of weather, heat, and no rain, the landscape dies. That just creates a compounding ripple effect, and really an accelerant to the problem. Look at what's happening today in Los Angeles, how fast that's moving. Had there been access to water, had there been a green, thriving landscape, the place where people live would be a lot more moderated, there'd be a lot more rainfall, and there'd be a lot more buffer to the extremes. So it's as current today as it will be in the future. And if we're not part of this conversation and narrative at our local sales level and our own business models, it's going to be an opportunity missed by us, and it's going to have impacts on our customers and our business future, and our ability to really be, again, relevant to a workforce and a society that really looks at us as a value added versus a nicety after.
You know, Alan, you've brought so many thoughts to the table today and so much information. And, you know, I have a lot of thoughts going through my mind right now and a lot of questions, right? Because there's so many things to further understand about this. You know, when we even get asked the question, you know, what's our carbon footprint, and understanding it, you know, what are we doing to reduce our CFP? We hear a lot about that, right? And we all try to come up with things that we're doing to reduce our CFP, like battery operated cars, battery operated equipment. But at the end of the day, if we listen to what you're saying, and what we need to understand is that plants, not just trees, plants, right? Plants sequester carbon, and carbon produces clean air. And I think understanding that, you were very good at helping us understand that. And now, as it relates to, of course, us as sales professionals, and even more importantly to our clients, helping them understand how they can make a greater impact, of course, with their landscape and using their properties. Like you said, 80% of the world's population is living in cities. And so we need to be greening up our cities. And so what a great opportunity our industry has, really, to personalize this. And for me, you know, this was one of the things that for me was very personal, and I almost got emotional thinking about it before the show, about the personal impact that this, and that we all have in this, and that we have in this as an industry, as we put together what this means and how this feels for us as we make this personal connection. You know, we look to the recruiting process, even within our industry, you know, how we do team building and engagement within our industry. You talked about your staff. They're not just coming in to service 100 client properties. They're making an impact on 1,000 people's lives. That is so beautiful. Let's talk a bit about how we create a new horizon here, how we, you know, use this to differentiate within the new generation, the mindset as it relates to work, right? Because the generation today is looking for meaningful purpose, right? You know, they're looking for creating change and doing things that have impact. Let's talk about, you know, how we can engage our staff in being purposeful and meaningful and creating change as it relates to this whole topic.
Well, I think that was one of the catalysts to my thought process in the beginning. Yet we can always have, again, speaks to differentiation, we can always have a greater impact on our carbon footprint. There's lots of ways we can fine tune and reduce it. But that's also, in some cases, we may be shocked at what our carbon footprint is, because we are labor intensive, we are equipment intensive. We do have lots of resources in the field, because landscapes take up a significant part of an urban environment. But at the same time, the differentiation piece is our product and services has a positive contribution to net zero. So I always look at the example of a Tesla car and how well, there's so many examples out there of everybody that's driving towards net zero. Well, how do you get to net zero? If net zero is the sum of the equation of what is your carbon footprint plus what is your carbon capture equals your net zero. I would argue very few business contributors within any environment have such an impactful carbon capture, especially in close proximity to the problem itself. So the analogy I always use is those that can impact the population within a greenhouse, no pun intended, but literally speaking, you put 1,000 people in a greenhouse, and then you see the deterioration, you see the heat increase in the greenhouse, you see the air quality decrease, you see the people in it start to sweat and suffer by the end of a hot day. And then to help fix it, go plant 1,000 trees outside the greenhouse. Go plant them out in the rural environment and ask me if anything changed for the people in the greenhouse. They're still going to feel all the same impacts. But if you take those 1,000 trees and you plant them in the greenhouse with the people, you will see a dramatic difference instantly. So our craft and services and what we do as a profession, coast to coast, nationwide, it doesn't matter where it is in the world, because air doesn't have boundaries like a lot of things in society. We can have a profound impact. And then the better we can educate, again, these in really simple ways, that's where we're going to have the points of connection. That's where we're going to differentiate. And that's why I focused on even clean air, not carbon, because what is a ton of carbon? And if I completely electrify my fleet, do I really understand what my net zero is? And did I even talk about all the benefits and the positive things that we do in our profession with all those inputs? So that's where some of the simple equations, I just know from some of the research we did, I can exponentially increase a single square meter or square foot of landscape. If you properly look after it, you can go as high as 10x on its contribution. So you don't need to plant 10 times more trees. One tree that's healthy and living will produce 10 times the effect of a tree that's not healthy or dying. So that's important to maintenance. It's important to have the right plant in the right place. It's the importance of everything we do in our knowledge of how we make sure that every aspect, every inch, every corner of a city is making a difference. And how do we help people understand the first thing you shouldn't do when things go extreme is turn off the water. The second thing, you shouldn't not look after the landscape. You shouldn't, in an extreme environment, take out all the plants and put in plastic. These are all things that will dramatically impact negatively your environment. So again, in the world of differentiation, put yourself on the side of the equation that uniquely separates you versus putting yourself in the narrative of where you're competing with Tesla car in the energy sector, transportation sector, the manufacturing sector, all in the quest for net zero, when there's so much more profound story and differentiation of what you're doing on the positive side that starts the conversation.
Yeah, I love the. I'm going to come in from the side door on this one because I hear what you're saying, but I'm also thinking about our industry, how challenged we are to find labor, right? How critical it is for us to continue to grow our teams if our business is growing, and how to add more talent. And what better way to advertise your business that you're able to, call it whatever tagline you want, but create a difference by cleaning the air. Come work for us and help clean the air. Those are the types of things that I think this generation is looking for when they're seeking employment. They want to work for a company that's making a difference. They want to have a job that's making a difference.
Yep.
They don't necessarily need 20 hours of overtime anymore. They need a 40-hour, 45, 50-hour commitment to something purposeful. And I think what you're saying and you're telling us in this conversation is that there is opportunity for landscape industries, and there's got to be tens of thousands of them around, 100,000 of them in the U.S. alone. If we took the approach that, as David said earlier in the comment, make it personal, have companies take a little personal accountability and educate their clients on the benefits of clean air and the benefits of healthy landscapes. I agree. A large mature tree in its visual state looks healthy and happy, but it could be struggling and dying a slow death. And if we let that 40-foot maple die because we didn't address some root fertility, shame on us. We're never going to replace that 40-foot tree. We're going to need 10 of them, right? So having a different approach to looking at our landscapes to be able to keep them healthy and vibrant is another differentiator. As a salesperson, I'm looking around at some of the campuses we maintain in both urban and city settings and say, first thing I'm doing is telling my account managers tomorrow, let's get a deep fertility program going for all our trees.
Mhm.
Let's just tell them why we want to do it. Don't just tell them we want to do it because there's an economic benefit, right? Or there could be an economic benefit to us. Let's tell them what the benefit is to them and to the environment. So
But also Billy, look at the environment from a perspective of academia. Universities don't seem to have a problem filling their campuses with healthcare professionals. University campuses and college campuses don't have a problem filling their environmental programs. Ask almost every university or college how they're filling their horticultural programs and getting bums in seats and people that are passionate about it. And the people that will go into an environmental science program or career, they have no problem going into the middle of nowhere to do water sampling, to get eaten by mosquitoes, to support what they see as a bigger purpose. But in reality, most of what they're being taught is completely relevant to landscape management, to biology and ecosystem servicing. So it's a little bit on us. Just look at where all the young people are going. Look at where they're looking for jobs. Look at where the schools are full. And then how do we speak to those students? Unfortunately, not in the landscape profession, but again, the environmental students could be easily moved into the landscape profession. And those that are in the healthcare professions too, I have some great colleagues here that work for some of the biggest health sciences campuses. You mentioned a few that are your clients. They understand the importance of this connection between health and wellness in the marketplace. So again, I think there's huge opportunity. It's a little bit of us understanding, taking a look at what is our sales differentiation. And we talked about it a little bit before the show here. It relates, sales is exactly the same to our customers as it is to our employees. So how do we package this, and how do we embody our teams to speak the language that is meaningful to them and that they can convey to their customers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. We talk about the opportunity to differentiate here. We really have the opportunity to redefine the landscape, don't we? And where its place is in society, and what the horizon looks like. We're in a moment in history right now where we have the opportunity to plant the seed, utilizing our knowledge and experience of the past, right? At a grassroots level to create alignment. We need to get back and we got to create alignment here. Billy, you talked about it, offering our clients health programs for their trees, because again, this is about them understanding how they can have their lung capacity increased, throughout their campuses and properties with the health of their plants. Alan, what would be a great way this has been a great summary, great conversation today. What would be a great way to summarize everything from today? Parting comments, parting thoughts. We're just scratching the surface here today. I feel like we're on a train right now that just got going, and it's hard to stop a train. So where to from here, and what are some good closing comments?
I think the two that come to mind, especially since when we're in the middle of winter season in both the United States and Canada, and with a lot of our members, the landscape itself is in all seasons as it relates to air, water, and soil, and how we manage it, and our ecosystem servicing. It is very technical when you get into a city. So don't think of winter as not being a contributory factor. We manage water in many forms and many realities that can impact our summer operations too, if you think about it in that context of climate. But also think of climate, it's not just about organics or nature-based solutions or let Mother Nature do it. I've said it over and over here. Our cities are built environments, built ecosystems. It is critical that we understand the shortcomings and the technical implications. I won't go into it, but I have a fish tank. It's a glass box in my office. It's always here. That ecosystem, because living plants with CO2 fertilization attached to it and sunlight representation, that glass box supports everything that's living in it. But that's through knowledge. Our cities can do the same thing. It's not that we need less people. It's not that we need to not support biodiversity. It's not that it's one or the other. It's really incumbent on us to understand how they all intersect each other and how we help our clients and our employees with knowledge find that balance, find the relation, find the hope, find how they can participate. And it's not complicated. You don't need to change your business. It's more how you apply your knowledge to the conversation. That's the first step. And then the second step is to start to fine tune what we do from winter operations to summer operations, commercial to residential, whether the top of a skyscraper or on the ground. How can all these things contribute to the ecosystem at large? And how does it service the plant, which in turn services us?
Yeah, I
Well
love it.
said. Well said.
That's
You know,
great.
Billy, Alan, it's been a great show today. It's been a great episode as we've talked about differentiating ourselves as sales professionals. Alan, I hate to do this, but we got to end our segment today, and it sounds like we got a lot more to circle back on. Thank you for everything you've done today to enlighten us and enlighten our guests, our listeners, and we look forward to having you back. And all the best to you this year, of course, in your organization and everything that you're doing for our industry and for the world. I'm sure you have a big year lined up ahead. Where can people get a hold of you on LinkedIn? I'm sure you're there.
LinkedIn, you can search both by Turf Systems or by Alan White, based in Burlington, Ontario. So yeah, you can reach out to me there. I'm usually pretty easy to find, but if not, just look for Turf Systems Inc. in Burlington, Ontario, and you can reach me here as well. Thanks, guys, for the opportunity. It's great chatting with you, and I really like what you're bringing to the profession. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Alan. Great chatting with you.
Thanks.
All the best. You know, Billy, there's just so much there, right? There's so many things there for our listeners to take a hold of, right? And I think just if you've heard something today on the show, right? If there's just something new, some information that's going to help you in your business, use it, take it, make something of it. This is a big topic.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, as we, go through our sales lives, there are very few people that have impacted me the way Alan has. I mean, a lot of people, it's kind of rinse and repeat. There's a lot of stuff that's out there that's, listen, sell this way, engage, these best practices on selling. I think Alan's message has been it's been similar to a lot of our guest messages. A lot of our guests, whether they're vendor partners or actually people in the industry similar to us, a lot of them are talking about educating their clients and helping people understand what they know and what could help their clients be better. And it's no better place than to have these guests onto our platform, our show here, Sales Talk Show. That's why we brought it together, is to help educate. So exciting guests, exciting information, a lot there. But I think if you break it down into, air, soil, and water, and, clean air calculator, it makes a ton of sense.
And differentiating yourself in the sales process, when you can make a difference for your client and make it meaningful that way and personal, that's a game changer. I think there's just so much value in that and having these tools.
Yeah, I look at a lot of the information that we get from our guests and just people in general in the industry. A lot of times it's sort of like the Cliff Notes, right? To a difficult topic, where you can take the Cliff Notes and bring it to your client, where their time is so valuable. They don't have the time to dig into all the things that Alan has told us over the multiple times we met with him before today. But we've been able to create some Cliff Notes from what Alan told us. And now we can share those with our teams individually. And then maybe our team members could share them with somebody else. And that slow drip process of spreading the message throughout the landscape community. I'm excited to spend more time with Alan. I just, some of this stuff is really helpful to the environment, and that's something I'm really passionate about.
We have that opportunity, don't we? And
yeah, we do.
As an industry, and I think about even right now, our industry is gathered here in Toronto at Landscape Ontario's Congress, big show going on right now, and
that's right.
a lot of people gathering here in Toronto as we look to Congress from Landscape Ontario, one of our key sponsors, our alliance partners, Landscape Ontario, and so just a great time.
Ontario is a great partner, great organization. They've developed a learning, a career center that they can, teach the next generation of landscape and turf professionals. Just so impressed on what they're doing over there. I've been able to get in contact with them a little bit about, we're a little bit away from it, but this summer I'm going to be speaking at Snowposium on some best practices with sales to try and help help our listeners and help the listeners across the U.S. and Canada, be a little bit better at their trade, at their task at hand, being a sales professional. So excited about that, and very, very grateful for Landscape Ontario's commitment to the Sales Talk Show.
Yeah, very much so. We're grateful for their alliance partnership, as we are for SIMA, the Snow and Ice Management Association, but also to our title sponsor, Pless. We couldn't do the show without them, and so we're real thrilled to bring to you today's episode from Pless, and that's a wrap. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. And that's going to be our next episode is going to be February 13th. We're still vetting a couple of great guests. We'll have someone that's going to be fun and exciting. We'll share that with you as soon as we have them firmed up. But listen, if you're going to do something, if you want to do it better, you just need to do it more often. Cheers.